In our previous video, we learned about the first steps before starting a new project. Those steps were about submitting a professional project proposal, and they are focusing on defining the problem, generating ideas, selecting the best idea out of those many ideas you've generated, and develop the project proposal. Today, I want to talk about the product backlog. You may ask yourself why we are talking about this topic, or maybe why now. So the answer to those questions might need some clarifications. First, as you know, this is a series of developing an inventory management application, which means we are developing a software. Thus, we want to use Scrum framework to manage the project development lifecycle. Second, the product backlog is an essential part of Scrum framework, and it is crucial that you understand its importance before we proceed. I will be dividing the product backlog topic into two separate videos. The first one, which is this one, will focus on introducing the term and explaining how it's being used. The second video will focus on developing the product backlog for the inventory management application, so we get the opportunity to actually work on the list. So, what is a product backlog? In a simple way, the product backlog is a list of requirements that you need to complete for your solution. Of course, the list has some characteristics such as it must be categorized and sequenced. The product backlog also is a dynamic list. This means it can be updated in terms of priority, or maybe adding items such as bugs or change requests throughout the project development lifecycle. It's really about common sense. Think about that for a second. When you are about to do something that may need some preparation or has, let's say, many details that are maybe difficult to remember, you may start by writing down what are the things that you need to complete, right? For example, if you are going to buy groceries, you may write down a list and maybe group up your items in a way that you put vegetable items together, maybe meat products together, and so on, to make it easy to navigate. You may also write down some notes. For example, a note says, get vegetables items first and then get the meat so it doesn't stay long out of the fridge. Your grocery list also can be dynamic. For example, you can replace an item if you find a good replacement. So let's address this in a more technical ways. So when we say that the product backlog is categorized, it means to make it easier to read and follow. There are many ways to categorize a product backlog list. For example, we can categorize it by functional areas, and we can categorize it by item types. We will be looking at this in more details in the next video, but for now, let's take a quick example. We can use the functional area as a category type. For example, we can use the system settings, put it as a title, and we put all the items that are related to the system settings under that. We can do another category under system settings by using the item type, for example, bug items together, user stories together, technical requirements together, and so on. Okay, so now that we finished defining the categories, or what it means by having a categorized list, the next question is, what about sequenced? In every sprint, specifically in sprint planning, you will take some items out of the product backlog. Those items must be completed by the end of sprint. So it is important that all of the items in the product backlog are sequenced properly. The sequence represents the list order as well as the item's priority. This is needed to ensure that you are in the right order of developing your requirements. What are the steps to develop the product backlog? Creating a product backlog starts with the product vision. which must be already identified when you have reached step 3 in creating a project proposal. Think about it. When you study the possible solution, you cover the budget, the performance, the ease of use, all of which are based on the objectives that you already have been identified. That being said, your product vision is just a summary of your previous work. Having your product vision ready, your next step is identifying the project epics. So I'm using the epic term because I want you to be more familiar with agile terms. In an easy definition, you can think of an epic as a smaller goal that was taken from the product vision. In other terms, you can think of an epic as a feature of the software. The last step is to add items to your product backlog. So how can we do that, or how can we generate those items? The answer is, again, by dividing your epics into even smaller items called requirements. So as you noticed here, like it is really by cutting down what we have to smaller chunks, and then we move on to the next step. So to give you more clarification, application requirements or product backlog items are usually added as user stories. However, there are more other types that we will look into them later on. They are related, such as I said, as bugs or maybe change requests or other requirements. There are some important considerations that I want to highlight for a professional product backlog. 1. The product backlog must be the one and only source of all requirements. If you have any change request or a bug or any other requirements, it must end up in the product backlog list. 2. The product backlog must be stored in a place that is easy to access by the project team. 3. Although it is a team effort to develop and update the product backlog, it is the responsibility of the product owner only to control and manage the list. 4. No individual entries must happen. Any change to the product backlog must be done collaboratively. 5. The content of the product backlog must be clear and easy to understand. 6. The team must be able to plan ahead, which means like they are kind of know what will be added in the next 2 sprints. This requires a level of understanding of the items as well as the overall goals of the project. More importantly, it requires a good maintaining of communications throughout the project. At this point, I really hope that you have a good understanding of the product backlog and how it's being developed. As I said, next time, we will go in a practical way to start developing the product backlog list for the inventory management application. Thank you very much. See you next time.